War movies often celebrate glory, but some films tell the truth soldiers recognize immediately. These forgotten British war stories reveal confusion, fear, and impossible decisions that rarely appear in Hollywood epics. From secret raids that collapse without warning to desperate battles fought in deserts, jungles, and prison camps, these films expose the hidden side of conflict. Stay with us as we uncover 14 powerful British war films American veterans still respect today. Number 14, Attack on the Iron Coast, 1968. Some war films celebrate victory, others quietly reveal how fragile victory really is. Attack on the Iron Coast belongs to the second kind. The story follows a daring Allied commando raid during the Second World War. British forces plan a surprise strike against a heavily fortified German harbor. Intelligence suggests that destroying the port will cripple enemy supply lines along the coast. The plan sounds precise when officers describe it around a briefing table, but war rarely follows tidy plans. Major Jamie Wilson commands the mission. His small group of commandos must slip through enemy defenses at night and sabotage the harbor before reinforcements arrive. Every step of the raid depends on timing and silence. One mistake could trap the entire team behind German guns. What gives the film its lasting power is the way the operation slowly collapses. Communication fails. Unexpected resistance appears. The soldiers realize they are trapped inside a mission that was flawed from the beginning. Veterans often respect the film because it shows a truth many war stories avoid. Courage alone cannot fix a broken plan. Number 13, A Walk in the Sun, 1945. War cinema often rushes toward the battle. A Walk in the Sun does something unusual. It studies the long, quiet road that leads to the battle. The film follows an American infantry platoon moving through the Italian countryside shortly after the Allied landings at Salerno during the Second World War. Their objective is a farmhouse believed to contain German machine gun positions. The mission sounds straightforward, yet the journey toward that farmhouse becomes the real story. The soldiers march across dusty roads and empty fields while trying to predict what waits ahead. They talk constantly because talking keeps fear under control. Some speak about home. Others joke about the strange situation that has brought them to a foreign country with rifles in their hands. Director Lewis Milestone captures these moments with calm patience. The camera stays close to the men as they move through the landscape. Each step builds tension because the enemy might appear at any moment. Many veterans later praise the film because it reflects something deeply familiar. War is not only about combat, it is about the long, uneasy silence before the shooting begins. Number 12, The Long Day's Dying, 1968. Sometimes the most terrifying battlefield is a silent forest where every sound could mean death. The Long Day's Dying tells the story of 3 British paratroopers stranded behind enemy lines during the Normandy campaign of the Second World War. Their unit has moved forward without them. German patrols search the countryside. The soldiers must hide in the woods and wait for an opportunity to escape. The film moves at a deliberate pace because the men cannot move freely. Every snapped branch could reveal their position. Every distant voice might belong to a German patrol closing in on their hiding place. The forest becomes a prison made of trees and shadows. What makes the film unforgettable is its focus on the psychological pressure of isolation. The soldiers begin to question whether rescue will ever arrive. Their conversations shift from hope to doubt as exhaustion slowly erodes their confidence. Director Peter Collinson avoids traditional battle scenes and instead explores the quiet terror of being trapped in enemy territory. The result is a war story that feels hauntingly intimate. It reminds viewers that survival in war often depends on patience, courage, and the fragile luck of remaining unseen. Number 11, Yesterday's Enemy, 1959. War stories usually draw a clear line between hero and villain. Yesterday's Enemy challenges that comforting illusion. The film takes place in the dense jungles of Burma during the later stages of the Second World War. A British patrol captures a small group of Japanese soldiers after a tense skirmish. Among the prisoners is an officer who may possess vital information about a planned ambush somewhere nearby. The British commander understands that hundreds of Allied soldiers could die if the location remains unknown. Captain Langford commands the patrol with intelligence and authority. Yet the situation slowly forces him toward a moral cliff. Its traditional interrogation methods fail to produce answers. Time is running out. Every minute lost may allow the hidden Japanese unit to strike first. The film explores a brutal ethical dilemma. Langford must decide whether extracting information through force can ever be justified if it saves lives. The soldiers around him struggle with the same question. Some support the desperate measures, others fear the cost of abandoning the moral rules they believe define their cause. Stanley Baker delivers a powerful performance as the officer wrestling with these impossible choices. His calm exterior hides growing conflict as responsibility presses heavily upon him. Director Val Guest presents the jungle not simply as a battlefield, but as a pressure chamber where principles are tested. The atmosphere feels claustrophobic as the patrol waits for the prisoner to speak. Many veterans and historians have admired the film because it refuses easy answers. Combat often forces soldiers into decisions where every option carries guilt. The story reveals how war blurs the difference between right and wrong. And as these questions linger in the air, another British war film pushes the idea even further by exposing cruelty within the Allied ranks themselves. Number 10. Ice Cold in Alex, 1958. The desert can be just as dangerous as the enemy. Ice Cold in Alex unfolds during the North African campaign of the Second World War. A British Army captain must escort 2 nurses across hundreds of miles of hostile desert while German forces close in from every direction. Their only transport is a battered ambulance that struggles to survive the brutal environment. Captain Anson carries the burden of leadership with quiet determination. The journey seems simple on paper. Reach the safety of Alexandria before the desert or the enemy destroys them. But the endless landscape quickly becomes their greatest opponent. Sandstorms reduce visibility to almost nothing. The sun drains strength from every traveler. Mechanical failures threaten to leave them stranded between distant battle lines. Each obstacle forces the group to push forward despite exhaustion. Tension grows when a mysterious South African soldier joins the convoy after claiming to have escaped German captivity. At first, he appears helpful and loyal, yet subtle details suggest he may not be who he claims to be. Director J. Lee Thompson turns the desert into a character of its own. Vast empty horizons remind the audience how small and vulnerable these travelers truly are. The slow journey builds suspense as danger approaches from both nature and deception. Veterans have often praised the film because it captures the relentless fatigue that soldiers experience during long campaigns. Survival sometimes depends less on heroics and more on endurance. The final scene has become legendary in British cinema. After surviving the ordeal, Captain Anson sits inside a quiet bar and finally drinks the cold beer he dreamed about throughout the journey. For a moment, the war disappears, but the next film reminds us that sometimes the enemy can appear much closer than expected. Number 9, Went the Day Well, 1942. And during wartime, Britain feared invasion more than anything else. Went the Day. Well imagines a terrifying scenario in which German soldiers secretly land in a quiet English village disguised as British troops. At first, the residents welcome them with polite hospitality. The uniforms look familiar. The accents seem convincing. Nothing appears unusual. Then the truth slowly begins to reveal itself. The soldiers are not allies. They are enemy commandos sent to secure the village before a full-scale invasion begins. Communication lines are cut. Roads are blocked. The peaceful countryside becomes an isolated battlefield where ordinary citizens must defend their homes. The film was released while the war was still raging across Europe. Its message carried urgent warning for audiences who knew invasion remained a real possibility. Yet the story does more than create suspense. It also explores how quickly normal life can collapse when violence enters a community. Villagers who once worried about crops and daily routines suddenly face impossible decisions. Some show courage that surprises even themselves. Others panic under the weight of danger. The film portrays civilians not as helpless victims, but as people capable of resistance. Director Alberto Cavalcanti builds tension carefully, as suspicion spreads from house to house. Every corner of the village becomes part of the conflict. The result is one of the most unsettling wartime thrillers produced in Britain. Instead of distant battlefields, the war arrives directly at the doorstep of ordinary people. And as British filmmakers continued examining the realities of conflict, they eventually turned their attention to the skies where a battle for survival would decide the fate of an entire nation. Number 8. Battle of Britain, 1969. In the summer of 1940, the fate of Britain depended on a thin line of pilots flying into the sky each morning. Battle of Britain recreates one of the most decisive air campaigns in modern history. After conquering much of Europe, the German Luftwaffe begins a relentless assault on British airfields and cities. The objective is simple: destroy the Royal Air Force and clear the way for a full invasion of the British Isles. What makes the film remarkable is its devotion to realism. Instead of relying on visual tricks, the production assembled dozens of authentic aircraft. Spitfires and Hurricanes roar across the screen, while German bombers appear in terrifying formations. The sound of engines alone creates tension long before the shooting begins. The story does not revolve around one hero. Instead, it follows several pilots and commanders struggling to defend their country with limited resources. Every day the same question echoes through command headquarters. Can the Royal Air Force hold the line for one more day? Young pilots scramble into the sky knowing that experience offers no protection against enemy fire. Some return exhausted, yet determined. Others never return at all. The film quietly reminds viewers that many of the men defending Britain were barely older than students. Historians and veterans have respected the film because it captures the scale and desperation of the air campaign. Its victory did not arrive through grand speeches. It emerged from thousands of individual sorties flown by pilots who understood the cost of failure. By the time the Luftwaffe finally withdraws, the skies above Britain have become a graveyard of shattered aircraft. And while the battle for the skies demanded courage, another film reveals a darker reality where loyalty and survival become far more complicated. Number 7. Play Dirty, 1969. War cinema often celebrates noble missions carried out by honorable soldiers. Play Dirty tears that image apart. The story unfolds in the brutal deserts of North Africa during the Second World War. A British commando unit receives orders to cross hundreds of miles of enemy territory and destroy a German fuel depot. The assignment appears heroic when described in headquarters. Once the men begin the journey, the truth becomes far less inspiring. Captain Douglas leads the group with professional discipline, while his second-in-command approaches the mission with ruthless practicality. The soldiers under their command understand that success depends not on bravery, but on deception and survival. As the convoy moves deeper into the desert, alliances begin to shift. Trust becomes fragile, supplies run low, and the men discover that the enemy is not the only danger waiting for them. Michael Caine delivers a memorable performance as a reluctant officer, forced to adapt to the harsh logic of unconventional warfare. The desert landscape reflects the moral emptiness surrounding the mission. Endless sand stretches toward the horizon, while the soldiers question whether their orders make any sense. Director André de Toth presents the operation as a grim exercise in necessity rather than heroism. Every decision carries consequences that cannot be undone. Many veterans have admired the film because it rejects romantic visions of war. Combat often demands actions that feel uncomfortable or even shameful. Survival sometimes depends on abandoning the ideals that soldiers believed they were defending. And if Play Dirty reveals the ugliness behind special operations, the next film exposes an even more disturbing battlefield inside a military prison camp. Number 6. The Hill, 1965. The enemy does not always wear a different uniform. The Hill takes place inside a British military punishment camp in North Africa during the Second World War. Soldiers who have broken regulations are sent to this remote desert outpost where discipline is enforced with relentless cruelty. At the center of the camp stands a steep mound of sand known simply as the Hill. Prisoners are ordered to climb it repeatedly under the burning sun while guards shout commands from below. The exercise is meant to break resistance and force obedience. For many men, it becomes a form of torture. Sean Connery plays Joe Roberts, a soldier whose refusal to submit places him in direct conflict with the camp authorities. Roberts believes that discipline should never erase basic humanity. The guards believe fear is the only effective tool for control. Director Sidney Lumet transforms the prison camp into a suffocating psychological arena. Walls of barbed wire trap the prisoners between endless desert and unyielding authority. Every command shouted across the yard echoes like a threat. The film explores the danger of power without accountability. Officers who claim to protect military order slowly become prisoners of their own brutality. Many viewers were shocked by the story when the film first appeared, yet veterans recognized a painful truth within it. War does not only test courage on the battlefield, it also tests character within the ranks. And as British filmmakers continued examining the moral consequences of conflict, the next story would carry audiences into a jungle where one officer must make a decision that could haunt him forever. Number 5. Too Late the Hero, 1970. Some war missions are designed with confidence, and others begin with the quiet understanding that almost no one will survive. Too Late the Hero unfolds on a remote Pacific island during the Second World War, where a small British unit prepares for a dangerous reconnaissance operation behind Japanese lines. The objective sounds simple: destroy a radio station that allows enemy forces to coordinate troop movements across the region. The reality proves far more complicated. Michael Caine plays Lieutenant Tosh Hearn, a reluctant interpreter who suddenly becomes essential to the mission. Hearn is not a typical battlefield hero. He understands the language of the enemy, but has little enthusiasm for combat itself. His presence within the patrol highlights the strange mixture of personalities that often form military units. The commandos move through dense jungle terrain where every step could reveal their location. Heat and humidity drain their strength, while enemy patrols circle the island, searching for intruders. Communication becomes difficult. Supplies grow scarce. Slowly, the men realize the mission was based on fragile intelligence. Director Robert Aldrich builds suspense through constant uncertainty. The jungle environment hides danger in every shadow, while the patrol struggles to remain invisible. Conversations between soldiers reveal doubt about whether the operation was worth the risk. As the situation deteriorates, the mission transforms into a desperate fight for survival rather than a calculated strike. Individual courage still appears, but it cannot erase the brutal mathematics of war, where some plans collapse before they even begin. Its veterans have respected the film because it refuses to pretend that every operation ends in triumph. Sometimes soldiers are sent into impossible situations where bravery becomes the only resource left. And while Too Late the Hero reveals the cost of flawed strategy, the next story exposes a disaster created by arrogance and misguided leadership. Number 4. The Charge of the Light Brigade, 1968. History often remembers victories with pride. Disasters, however, leave behind far more complicated lessons. The Charge of the Light Brigade revisits one of the most infamous military blunders in British history during the Crimean War of the 19th century. A cavalry unit receives an order to attack what officers believe is a vulnerable enemy artillery position. In reality, the command sends hundreds of soldiers directly into a valley surrounded by heavily armed Russian forces. Director Tony Richardson presents the story with a mixture of spectacle and bitter irony. Officers within the British command structure argue about strategy, while political ambition clouds their judgment. Messages are misinterpreted. Orders are passed along without clear understanding. Each mistake pushes the cavalry closer toward catastrophe. When the charge finally begins, the soldiers ride forward with discipline and courage, even though confusion surrounds the mission. Many of them sense that something has gone terribly wrong, but military obedience leaves little room for hesitation. The thunder of hooves echoes across the valley as artillery fire begins to tear through the advancing formation. Yet the film refuses to portray the event as glorious sacrifice. Instead, it exposes how pride and incompetence can combine to produce tragedy on a massive scale. Animated historical illustrations appear throughout the narrative, reminding viewers that war often unfolds inside a web of political ambition and social hierarchy. Veterans and historians have admired the film for its willingness to criticize leadership rather than glorify combat. Soldiers may show bravery, yet that bravery cannot correct orders that were flawed from the beginning. The charge itself becomes a symbol of loyalty pushed beyond reason. Riders continue forward, not because victory seems possible, but because duty demands it. Oh, and if this historical disaster reveals the danger of misguided command, another film turns the spotlight toward a hidden prison camp, where discipline evolves into cruelty. Number 3. The McKenzie Break, 1970. War does not always rage across battlefields. Sometimes it unfolds quietly behind barbed wire. The McKenzie Break takes place inside a prisoner of war camp in the Scottish countryside during the Second World War. The camp houses captured German naval officers, who appear calm and cooperative. To most observers, the prison seems orderly and uneventful. Yet British intelligence begins to suspect something unusual. Captain Jack Connor receives orders to investigate the camp after reports suggest that several German prisoners have escaped under mysterious circumstances. Connor soon discovers that the quiet facility hides a carefully organized network of loyal Nazi officers determined to return to active duty. At the center of the operation stands Captain Willi Schluter, a charismatic German officer who maintains strict discipline among his fellow prisoners. Schluter believes captivity is only a temporary setback. His goal is simple: escape the camp and continue the fight for his country. Brian Keith portrays Captain Connor with steady authority as he slowly uncovers the structure of the escape organization. The investigation becomes a psychological duel between two professional soldiers who respect each other while remaining sworn enemies. Director Lamont Johnson builds tension through quiet observation rather than explosive action. And conversations inside barracks and corridors reveal the strategic battle taking place between guards and prisoners. Every small detail could expose the hidden network or allow it to succeed. The film examines the strange respect that sometimes develops between adversaries who share the same military discipline. Connor understands the determination driving the prisoners even while working to stop them. Many veterans have appreciated the film because it highlights a rarely discussed aspect of wartime experience. Even within captivity, the struggle continues through planning, patience, and psychological endurance. And as the countdown moves closer to its final chapters, the next stories will reveal how British war cinema confronted even deeper questions about loyalty, morality, and the cost of survival. Number 2. Overlord, 1975. Many war films attempt to recreate history through dramatic storytelling. Overlord does something far more haunting. It blends fiction with real wartime footage to show how ordinary lives disappeared inside the vast machinery of global conflict. The story follows Tom, a quiet young man living in England during the Second World War. Like thousands of others, he receives his call-up papers and suddenly finds himself drawn into military service. At first, the experience feels strangely distant from reality. Training exercises resemble routine drills rather than preparation for deadly combat. Director Stuart Cooper uses authentic documentary footage from the war to surround Tom's fictional journey with genuine historical images. Bombers fill the sky above Europe. Factories produce endless lines of weapons. Troops march toward ships that will carry them across the English Channel. Tom eventually joins the massive force preparing for the D-Day invasion of Normandy. Soldiers crowd the docks while landing craft wait along the coastline. Every man understands the importance of the mission, yet few know whether they will survive the landing. What gives the film its unique emotional weight is the quiet sense of destiny surrounding the young recruit. Early scenes show Tom posing for a photograph in a small studio, where the photographer predicts his death with eerie certainty. From that moment, the story unfolds like a tragic prophecy, moving slowly toward fulfillment. The contrast between Tom's personal thoughts and the enormous historical event creates a powerful tension. War appears not as heroic adventure, but as an unstoppable machine carrying millions toward uncertain futures. Historians and veterans have praised the film for capturing the anonymity of soldiers who became part of the greatest amphibious invasion in history. Individual stories often vanish beneath the scale of such operations. Overlord reminds viewers that behind every photograph of marching troops stood a young person whose future depended on the unpredictable chaos of war. And the final entry reveals another British war story, where the greatest danger does not come from enemy soldiers, but from decisions made by desperate commanders. Number 1. The Last Grenade, 1970. Friendship forged in battle can survive many things. War, however, has a way of turning former allies into dangerous enemies. The Last Grenade explores the complicated relationship between two soldiers whose paths cross again years after the Second World War has ended. During the conflict, they fought on the same side while participating in covert operations across occupied territory. Those missions created a bond built on shared danger and mutual respect. Peace changes everything. One man becomes a respected officer serving Western interests in a volatile region, still shaped by colonial tensions. The other chooses a very different path. He becomes a mercenary willing to fight for whichever cause offers payment and opportunity. Their reunion occurs during a violent uprising, where political loyalties shift quickly, and the line between soldier and hired gun becomes difficult to define. What once was friendship now transforms into rivalry as each man finds himself supporting opposing factions. Stanley Baker portrays the hardened professional who views war as a permanent occupation. Richard Attenborough represents the officer still attempting to preserve some sense of moral duty within the chaos of modern conflict. Their encounters reveal how easily ideals can erode when survival and ambition enter the equation. Director Gordon Fleming places the story within a tense colonial battlefield, where shifting alliances dominate strategy. Combat scenes remain intense, yet the emotional core lies within the evolving relationship between the two former comrades. The film refuses to present war as a simple contest between good and evil. Instead, it reveals how political upheaval can reshape loyalties and transform yesterday's allies into tomorrow's adversaries. Many veterans have respected the story because it acknowledges a difficult truth. The end of one war does not guarantee peace. Sometimes it only creates new conflicts where soldiers must confront the complicated consequences of their past decisions. And with that final reflection, the countdown reaches its end, leaving behind a collection of British war films that dared to examine the uncomfortable realities hidden beneath battlefield legends.